aliens?
I'm absolutely convinced. That's all there is to it.
Skinwalker Ranch, also known as Sherman Ranch, is a property located approximately 480 acres southeast of Ballard, Utah. This is allegedly the site of paranormal and UFO-related activities. Its name is taken from the Skinwalker of the Navajo, a legend concerning malevolent witches. Legend states that the Navajos mastered shapeshifting in order to escape prosecution and relocation. Videos of strange lights have been captured from Skinwalker Ranch from multiple eyewitnesses. Could these UFOs be interdimensional? Or could they be a result of experiments of a new type of technology? Well, they dubbed the ranch the UFO Ranch due to its 50-year history of odd events said to have taken place there. Sightings of unidentified flying objects or orbs, large animals with piercing red eyes that they say were not injured when struck by bullets, and invisible objects emitting destructive magnetic fields. Then in 1995, billionaire real estate developer Robert Bigelow, who set up the research and advanced serious study of various fringe science and paranormal topics, most notably ufology. Deputy Administrator Colm Keller was quoted as saying the organization was not designed to study UFOs only. He claims, "We don't study aliens, we study anomalies." They're the same thing in a lot of people's minds, but not our minds. Then for some reason, the NIDSCI was disbanded in October 2004. Did they find what they're looking for? So far, Bigelow has remained silent in regards to the years of research at Skinwalker Ranch. But he has gone on the record to state that he is a believer in UFOs and alien existence. As we look through Google Maps, we notice strange circular patterns throughout the property. And in very close proximity to the Robert Bigelow Institute. Is there a reason for this? Could these be markers to signal visitors from above? More than 100 claims have come from individuals who eyewitnessed the appearance of UFOs in this property at different times. Some of the most eerie encounters had was by the Sherman family who owned the ranch prior to selling it to Bigelow. The Shermans observed a variety of craft. The most spectacular aerial phenomenon observed by Terry Sherman described, we would see these 100-foot circular openings appear in the air. It is like 4 orange-colored portals would open up. Looking through a high-powered scope, the Shermans watched as smaller craft would emerge from the hovering portals. They would fly around the property and then re-enter the doorways. The Shermans described the stealthy smaller craft as being about 60 by 40 feet and squarish with small short wings. The smaller craft looked like they were a flying grid. They also appeared to emit spikes of light which hit the ground. The Shermans thought this to be some sort of navigation system. Another eerie phenomenon soon began to plague the Shermans. The family started to notice glowing blue balls moving around the property. The balls gave off some kind of crackling sound. It seemed intelligently controlled and could either hover or move unbelievably fast. One evening, the Shermans watched as a blue ball approached one of their horses. The light hovered within a foot of the horse's face, spooking it mightily. Gwen shined a flashlight on the blue globe and it retreated. It then approached Terry as if it was inspecting him. Terry described it as a glass ball about the size of a baseball. which appeared to contain two blue fluids which intermingled with each other. Mr. Sherman says, "That was the scariest I've ever been in my life." After a while, the Shermans had enough, so they decided to sell the ranch, even though a dilemma was posed. "We didn't want to put anyone at risk," Terry says. Now, in 2018, the mystery behind Skinwalker Ranch is yet to be solved, but the sightings of strange lights continue to this day. Is there a reason why the Navajo Indians consider the area so sacred? Why would a billionaire spend so much time and effort if there was not solid evidence that there is a true UFO phenomenon that is happening? You just don't do that unless there is true solid evidence. What have they found? When will they release their discovery? We await. Until then, everybody keep your eyes on the skies, and we'll see you again next time.
Do you believe in aliens?
Let's just start from the
absolutely.
beginning of this whole business of how you even began to realize that, look, there's something strange going on. Let's hear it, John. This is quite amazing. Welcome to Third Phase of Moon.
Thank you very much. It is an amazing story. It's not a story that I ever elected to have, actually. I just unfortunately stepped in the middle of it. I bought a ranch in 1996, moved into it June 1st with my wife. The idea was to raise horses and provide an equine sanctuary for horses that were abandoned and for other animals that just needed a sort of a second chance in life. And what we ended up buying was a ranch that was in the middle of nowhere that we found out in very short order was a very strange place with interdimensional portals, not just one or two, but they seem to be all over Rainbow Valley. And we have six of them here on the property. And it's just been one crazy, crazy ride.
Well, you know what, John? Let's start out from the very beginning. So you bought this ranch. You're out there to help animals. How did you even was that your mission in life? You just wanted to get out there and say, hey, look, I'm going to take care of animals. I need to find a ranch, or was there some kind of maybe calling, something from within, that something else that drew you out there?
Well, I've always had animals, and I've always been very good with animals, especially ones that were abused. I was the guy that, when I was a kid, I would go down to the dog pound, and they'd have dogs down there that were, horribly abused and, were rather ferocious and vicious. And I always liked those dogs. So I'd always just go up to them and spend a couple of seconds with them, and they'd almost immediately accept me. And, we'd make fast friends. And so it's always been that way. I really never met an animal I couldn't get along with.
All right. Okay. Except possibly the alien, if you would call an animal or what have you. Okay. So 18 aliens. How about this? Let's just start off with the first. What would you call it? Would you call it murder? Would you call it you're killing them in self-defense? Let's start off with the first one, because that's probably one of the most shocking moments of your life when you actually realize what you just did. Can you go into that?
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to, Greg. What happened was this, and that is that after we moved into the ranch, within a very short time, we started seeing lots of bright orange orbs or lights in the south sky. We started seeing.
Okay. You might be coming in a little soft.
Frank.
A little soft. I just want to make sure the audio's better than if it could be better.
Okay. I'm trying to speak up as loudly as I can.
Okay, I think that's fine. That's fine. Great. Go ahead. So orbs of lights in the night sky. Yeah.
Of these lights, and eventually we got to the point where we started seeing other craft as well. And by that time, we already had horses that we'd adopted. We'd adopted about 18 Rottweilers, 19 Rottweilers that we had been dumped. And, the ranch was kind of off to a good start. But then we started having problems with horses that were mutilated that we found on the property the next morning after, a perfectly quiet night. And then the next morning we'd find a horse that had been horribly mutilated and had organs removed, eyes removed. The anus had been cored out, and they had gone inside and taken out organs, all sorts of horrible things. And, of course, we were horrified. That led shortly after that to I began to see these creatures inside the house. And at first I tried to be really kind of, decent about it and tried to, not be violent, not attack them or anything. But they didn't want to go along with that. They ended up attacking my wife. They ended up attacking me in our bedroom. And it just became a horribly unmanageable situation. My wife and I were totally freaked out by it. We didn't know, we'd never had anything to do with this kind of stuff before. And quite frankly, we'd never lived this far out in the desert by ourselves before. So we had no support. We had nothing other than each other. And I just decided, hey, look, I'm not going to let these little bastards run me off. It's like I'm not going to just give up the ranch that I saved up for since I was a little kid, working as a golf caddy and selling papers in Chicago to be able to afford. And, so I fought back. And, I call it self-defense because, I tried everything I could think of to communicate with them. And, they weren't giving me anything back except, hurting my animals and trying to attack my wife. At that point, it was kind of a war.
Wow. I would totally get where you're coming from. Definitely. You got a family, you got property, you got to protect. And this is basically your livelihood. And you got livestock, you got animals. And look, they're not giving you anything in return. But you just said that your wife was being attacked. Now, explain that. What happened in this instance?
Well, I mean, there were a number of incidents. When I say I've killed 18 of these things, it could be 10 times that many because, we've had literally hundreds of firefights here on the property with these creatures. I've used baseball bats. I've used, swords. I've picked them up by the ankles and smacked them against the brick walls. It's just been horrible. It has been literally just an all-out, a war. I mean, in the greatest sense of the word.
Is it true that your wife worked for the FBI?
My wife, when I met her, worked for the FBI. I worked with the Superior Court of Arizona. I also worked for the city of Phoenix, and I worked providing mental health and substance abuse counseling for various different agencies, all the way from working as a contractor with the feds to, you name it, pretty much private practice, almost any kind of psychiatric or social worker position at some time or another I did for over 30 years, which made it very difficult because here I am, living on the ranch, dealing with what I'm dealing with here. And meanwhile, I'm trying to, have this very respectable, position working in government and working with the government. And, I can't say a word to anybody about it.
Let me, there's some people on the flash chat. People are definitely, they're aware of your story and they got some questions. And one of the first questions is, can you tell me about the man who kills the monsters?
Okay. Well, I'm not sure what that means.
All right. Okay. Let's get back into. Yeah, that was a question that's coming in, and they asked me, ask him about the man who kills the monsters. Let's see. They said the machete man. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you used a machete on?
Well, okay. At the beginning of the story, I've been a little bit brief because of our short amount of time. I've tried to, run a few things together here. But when we first moved in, June 1st, 96, the very first day that we were here, I found a guy who walked up the driveway carrying a machete, and he looked like some kind of like old veteran guy from maybe Vietnam or something like that. And, he just kind of sauntered up the path, and he had this machete dangling from a piece of rawhide, and he just kind of, shaking it back and forth. He wasn't threatening anybody with it. And I walked out of my house. I put a 357 down the back of my pants and walked out to meet him, because out here there's no law. There was no law enforcement. There was nothing. It was just emptiness. And to see a guy walk up your driveway with a, 2.5 foot long machete, kind of makes you want to think twice about just going out and shaking hands with him. So I went out and talked to him, and, I asked him who he was, and he said he lived here. And I said, well, I just bought the place. There's absolutely no way that you're supposed to be here. And he looked at me and goes, well, you see that building in the back? And I said, yes, I do. And he says, well, that's where I live. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I got the deed of trust, and I paid for title insurance and the whole works. And nowhere in the paperwork was there a machete dude who lived in the tack room on the paperwork. And he said, well, I'm the guy that kills the monsters. And I said, what monsters? There's no monsters around here. I haven't seen anything. And he just looked at me and he goes, you will. And I said, well, I tell you what, man, you need to kind of pack up your stuff, because I don't have any, I'm not hiring any monster killers right now. And, he looked at me and goes, you're going to be sorry. And I said, well, I guess I'll be sorry then. But I'm sorry, but I don't have any need for your services right now. And he just kind of smiled, and he went back to the tack room, and he packed his stuff and turned around and walked off the property. And that was the last I ever saw of him.
So he gave you a warning, basically, that he knew there was something that you were going to experience at this ranch. He was almost like an olive branch, almost, and you've never seen this gentleman again that gave you pretty much a heads up, in my opinion.
It is true. I mean, in retrospect, and hindsight is always 20/20. I wish I'd kept him around, at least to talk to him more, and maybe, just kind of get inside his head and find out what he knew. But at the time, I thought it was so preposterous what he was telling me, and I didn't like the fact that he just kind of looked like somebody that, he just didn't look like he was in his right mind altogether. And, I didn't feel comfortable having somebody that strange around the ranch, at the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you just, in hindsight, everybody has the right answers. But in this case, now everything is kind of progressed into a violent means. It seems that now aliens are being killed. Let me ask you, what insinuates this? I understand that you're trying to protect your property and stuff, but when is it? Just when they're in your presence? How does it work? Are they trying to do something to you? What makes you one grab this samurai sword that you use multiple times and destroy and kill one, and then we'll get to what happens after you kill one of these aliens.
Well, Blake, the thing is this, and that is that I never, like I said, intentionally wanted to hurt these creatures until they started hurting us and doing things to us first. But as that progressed, I became more and more angry about the situation, because I kept saying to myself, how can I possibly have a good ranch when I'm infested with these creatures? I can't bring my friends out here. I can't do anything with this place under the circumstances. And the more and more I kept thinking about it, the more and more I felt like, man, I really got screwed on this deal. I paid cash for the place, and if I'd ever known that there was anything weird or anything bad about it, I never would have bought it. But the real estate guy, apparently he didn't know, and I'm sure Century 21 didn't know. And, it's just one of those things. I mean, I bought an alien ranch, I was just a dumbass. I didn't know any better.
All right. Okay. This is absolutely incredible. So we're speaking with a man that has had multiple encounters with aliens, and I'm not sure if he's had multiple encounters with different types of aliens. What happens after the alien is killed? And basically self-defense. So you got to admit that John Edmonds puts up a good reason why he's doing this. He's not asking for trouble, but when trouble finds them and they're harming his family, I ask you the question, would you do what John Edmonds is doing? We got more questions for Mr. Edmonds. More incredible insight from Stardust Ranch. This is Blake Cousins, Third Phase Moon. Everybody stand by. We'll be right back. Blake Cousins, Third Phase Moon. We're back live, and we are speaking with a man that has had encounters with aliens, and 18 of them didn't work out quite too well for the aliens. He's killed 18 of them in self-defense. In self-defense, he claims, and when this is going on, I'm sure you might want to think about picking up something to defend yourselves. But in this case, now where would be the evidence? Where is the evidence to these killings? And one's got to ask the question. So, John, I'm sure you could tell us what happens to these aliens once you kill them. Do you have 18 bodies stacked up? Can we come out to your ranch, take a look at them?
Yeah. I wish. Blake, the way it works is this, and again, I know all of this sounds incredible. It sounds insane. It sounds like a really big made-up story, but it isn't. I've never made a penny off of doing any of this. I never, at the ranch is up for sale. If anybody wants to buy it in the ranch.
Don't get me wrong, John. I totally, I'm here as Third Phase Moon. I hear thousands of stories, and I believe everybody's story in most cases. And I'm not judging your story. I totally, from what you're telling and how you're sounding, it doesn't sound like you're making it. I'm on your side, but these are just some of the questions that people ask. Where would the alien bodies be?
Blake, the way it works is this. If you take the head, if you're fortunate enough to be able to take the head off, the body stays. If you don't take the head off, the whole body and the head disappears. Even if you manage to get a good wound on one of them, they just disappear. They seem to be interdimensional in the fact that when they show up, we've been able to get some photographs of them. It wasn't me personally, but it was a team of investigators that were here that got 2 or 3 photographs of them emerge into our dimension gradually, and if they feel safe, they come all the way through. If they don't feel safe, they only come in partially, and you got to work with what you got.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So before we, there were some, you've got some photographic evidence, it sounds like. How about video evidence that people,
if
there's video evidence.
Photo, we've got
how would I
photo,
access
physical?
Can I share some of your photos on Third Phase Moon? Are there videos and photographs that you've shot?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. There's alien. Let's see. I don't even look at it anymore, but it used to be Alien Ranch at Weebly.com. There's a bunch of pictures there. There's actually at least 1 or 2 pictures of a gray alien that were taken here on the property. It's one of those things. If somebody, really wants to see something, they should just contact me directly, and I'll be happy to provide them evidence. We have an alien artifact, a rock, that one of the Greys dropped on the back of the property, and I picked it up immediately because I saw him drop an object. That rock has become pretty famous in its own right because it looks like it has a symbol on it that is cut all the way through this rock that looks like granite. And we had it looked at by a couple of specialists, and they both told us that it's impossible to cut that intricate a pattern in the rock without breaking the rock. So the other thing is that we had somebody pick it up here in the house and shine a laser through it, and the next thing we knew, it actually began to activate the portal that's in the living room. And that led to even more adventures where we began to actually activate that portal at will, and we've had different experiences as a part of that whole thing, but that's much further down the line in the story.
This gets more incredible as minutes go by talking to you on Third Phase Moon. We got people calling in from Skype. We got people calling in from everywhere. Probably wanted to talk to you, but right now I want to talk to John. And if anybody's got questions for John, just press number 1 on your keypad, and you'll be taken to the question list. If you got a question for John, for sure we'll get you in. Okay, so let me get this straight. So if you cut an alien's head off, they will basically dematerialize. Is this correct?
Well, actually, the other way around. If you cut the head off, the body stays, and you get to keep the whole thing. Okay. If you don't cut the head off, it disappears.
Is there any half bodies laying around at your place? Are you ever going to be able to keep one of these for evidence, or are you concerned about?
Well, we have.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we've actually. There was a guy a number of years ago named Dr. Levengood, and I was working with a guy named Bob Collins, Captain Robert Collins. I had been actually working behind the scenes producing Kevin Smith's show here in Arizona before he passed away. And so I got a chance to meet a lot of people in the UFO community. And when all these problems started happening here on the ranch, I didn't have a clue who to call. It's not like you can, look in the yellow pages and find, somebody to talk to about an alien body that, is laying here on your kitchen floor. And so I didn't know what to do. I mean, I killed one of these things with a samurai sword. I ran it through to the point where the sword actually penetrated the body and went into the wall behind it. I went to pull out the samurai sword, and I was fortunate enough at that point to be able to get a big chunk of, like a grapefruit-sized chunk of material, biological material from this alien. And I took it and I put it in a glass bottle and stuck it in the refrigerator.
Yeah, that's good.
So that I had something to
that's amazing.
cut up and use. Yeah. And it sprayed this fluid. I don't know if it's blood or whatever it was, but it's fluid or transmutation fluid or some kind of oily fluid, except it was very acidy on the floor, on the wall, and on these glass doors right behind where it happened. And so, we took as many samples as we could from that, and I sent them off to Dr. Levengood in Grass Lakes, Michigan. And then he proceeded to send them out for like the next year or 2 years to these different universities in different parts of the country. And he got actual DNA results, and he got actual, real scientific proof. In fact, when he sent me an email and a letter, he said, "John, you have the absolute smoking gun of proof of alien visitation and life here on Earth." And shortly thereafter, he died, along with his wife.
All right, so this is compelling me to go out and visit you. And how often is this going on? Is this on a continuing basis, or is the activity kind of slowed down?
Well, I'll tell you, we we had a visitor come out to the ranch July 30th of 2011, who said that she could do something to help us to try to ratchet down the amount of violent contact that we were having. Her name was Dr. Brandy Howe, and she was recommended to us by another person in the paranormal community. And she came out and spent an afternoon with us. And she ran through the house, went through the house with using her skill set. And shortly after that, things got really, really strange, like way stranger than ever before. But the actual violent contact with the Greys greatly diminished. When I say really strange, she brought 3 individuals with her that turned out to be ETs. And shortly after she arrived, several more literally just showed up in the living room. And kind of like Scotty beamed me down, kind of showed up. And we spent the rest of the afternoon with these individuals. And at first I was very, very skeptical. I thought somebody was just trying to pull a fast one. But they demonstrated within a shadow of a doubt that they were the real deal. And they brought all sorts of different types of technology and samples of things to us for us to examine. They created the equivalent of a hologram that was about 7 or 8 feet across and high, that was able to go ahead and show us literally a physical demonstration and an answer for everything that I asked them. And I spent the entire afternoon asking them very, very pertinent, very strong questions about how to do good things here in the world to try to change things and make things better, because we have so many issues that need to be conquered. And I figured, if nothing else, maybe I get some great answers. And indeed, I got some fantastic answers, things that could change the world. The thing that I asked them was, I said, I'm still skeptical. And rather than be offended or anything else, they said, well, what is it going to take to prove to you that we are who we say we are? And I said, well, I'd really like to see like a really big spaceship. And I'd like to see something like right outside, like right now. And they looked at each other, they looked at me, they looked at my wife, and they said, okay, let's go outside. And we literally walked out of the house, walked out onto the 10-acre property that we have here. And in those days, there was nothing around us. There was no houses or anything else. It's just hundreds of thousands of acres of absolute just barren desert. And they said, look over here across the street to the east. And I did that. My wife and I both did that. We were sitting on the back tailgate of my Ford F-350 pickup. And sure enough, the sky looked like all these boiling gray and black clouds. And the next thing I saw protrude out of the clouds and just hover right across the street from us. And this thing was the size of a stadium. I had never seen anything in my physical life that was that big. It had to have been between 4 and 6 stories high, and literally it was the size of a coliseum, like where you played football or baseball or something like that. Now, directly to the south, which was the right of me, the entire sky had this orange, kind of grayish, almost like a sunset type of look to it. And it was one spaceship, one flying saucer, almost wing to wing or circle to circle, however you want to say that, saucer to saucer, all across the southern horizon. There must have been dozens of them. And they just were fixed there. And my wife and I just looked at each other, and our mouths hung open. And I said, do you see what I see? And she said, what do you see? And I said, I see all these flying saucers to the south of us, and a giant one to the left of me across the street to the east. And she said, that's exactly what I see. And that was proof enough for me. And then right away after
you
that,
think? Yeah, that sounds
Suddenly,
absolutely insane. You know, some people have saying they've seen recently Walmart-sized UFOs. Now, this sounds like a super-sized Walmart UFO, a Coliseum-sized UFO, absolutely massive. Definitely something for the books on sightings. Now, let me ask you this: is it true that you don't shoot aliens with a gun or a rifle? Why?
I won't shoot anything in the house. I live in a brick house in Bounce, and I've got Italian quarry tile floors. And the one time that I ever made the mistake of trying to shoot one with a gun, I blew a hole in one of the quarry tile. And I'll tell you what, it's a son of a bitch trying to replace those things. So no.
All right, that makes sense. Makes sense. All right, a little audio difficulty there, but let's see. Let's bring in a caller here and see if they've got a question for Mr. John Edmonds. 442, you're live, Third Phase Moon. Go ahead with your question.
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Hello?
Loud and clear. Go ahead with your question. Yes.
Yeah, hi. My question is, what in the hell, or why the hell haven't we found out about this story? And I don't know. I'm just puzzled with this story right now. And why in the hell are we finding out about this now? I mean, this is like,
that's a good question. It's a good question, but that's why when I heard this story, sir, I'm like, wow, I've heard a little bit about it, but I never realized on how incredible this really is. And is F1 there? F1 is the one that made contact with John Edmonds for me, and he made this correspondence possible tonight. And he got John Edmonds minutes before we went live, and this is quite an incredible. F1, you got a question for John? Or Go ahead.
No, you know what? John, you spoke with me at length, and like I've told Blake and all the listeners all along, I've been through hell and high water. It's so nice to, you kind of, people that are real, that have experienced, that have lived with it their whole lives, they know, and it's kind of a natural progression, a natural understanding, a 100%, which is 1 in a million. When you talk to me, John, am I a legitimate person?
Absolutely. A normal story ever. Okay, there are other ranches where things like this have happened, like Skinwalker Ranch, things like that, to some extent. But the thing about it is that the people left. Okay, they didn't stay. They for whatever reason, they abandoned ship. And I'm just too stubborn for that. I'm also too damn because I spent all my money buying the ranch and animals.
Absolutely. Let's get some more questions. We only got a certain amount of time, but what about when they tried to abduct your wife? And people are waking up with pieces of skin missing. Now, this is coming in from the Flash Chat. Now, that sounds very interesting. So, can you answer those ones about your wife being abducted and people waking up with skin missing? People need to hear this, and this is a public service. Let me tell you, because people are experiencing the same thing John is. Go ahead, John.
All right, I'll tell you what happened. It was midsummer, and my wife goes to bed early because she gets up really early to go to work. And so she went to bed early. It was probably, 10:30. I went in to check on her, and she was floating, literally levitating about 2 feet off the mattress surface of our bed in our main bedroom, the master bedroom. And the sheet was thrown back. She had nothing on, which in those days, that's how she liked to sleep. So that was not unusual. And in front of her were 3 gray aliens standing there in line, trying to touch her inappropriately. I grabbed my sword and I immediately cut them in pieces. And later on, this experience was again something that began to occur, where they would come in the middle of the night and try to attack her. And we had an experience where she and I were in bed. She was asleep. I wasn't really sleeping that well because for the last 20 years, I don't sleep very deeply. And there was a light in the bedroom, a very strong, almost like I don't know what you would call it, kind of like a halogen kind of glowing lamp that came in through the windows, and the whole room was lit up. And she began to float up and out of the bed and literally through the house, to the outside of the house, to the carport. And I was following her, but I was so horrified by the experience that I probably should have just tried to wake her up or yell at her or something, but nothing would make any difference anyway. And I grabbed an AK-47. I'm a gun guy, and I'm very well armed. And I grabbed that AK-47, and as she floated out of the house and out into the parking lot, she was drawn up into a solid cone of light that was about maybe 10, 12 feet in diameter, and it came to a point at the end of an entrance into the belly of a ship. And as she reached that point, that aperture at the top, I decided that at that point, I'd either have to shoot or I'd have to say goodbye to my wife probably forever. And so I unloaded a clip, and the light shut off. She dropped. Fortunately, she wasn't hit. And I tried to catch her. It knocked us both into the gravel of the parking area below. And I was hurt. She was hurt. She woke up. We went in the house and collapsed. She asked me what the heck happened. I told her. She walked back into the bedroom. She lay down. She went right back to sleep. like nothing ever happened. And that was pretty much it. But then,
What about the intense situations? Very intense. Okay, what about the parts where people are waking up and their skin is missing?
I'll explain that. What happened is after this occurrence, about 3 to 4 days after that, she and I both ended up having these patches all over our hands, all over our feet, where the skin began to literally slough off. It was as if we were suffering from some kind of radiation poisoning. And she and I began to run a temperature, and we felt very flu-like, and we were just absolutely just horribly sick. And we ended up going to the emergency room, and the emergency room was very strange because they acted like nothing ever happened. They acted like somebody had already briefed them that we'd be coming, because they turned around and said, well, it looks like you've got some overexposure to the sun. Here's some cream. And they gave us some cream to put on, and which was, an absurd reaction, we thought. They took blood. They ran it through a bunch of different tests, and it all came back negative. And the interesting thing was we went back about 7 or 8 days getting so much worse, and we went to a different hospital, and they acted as if they expected us to appear there. And they took more blood work, and for some odd reason, the Center for Disease Control apparently was contacted. And then a few weeks later, we started getting federal people showing up here and doing inquiries with us. And eventually she got treated. And to make a long story short, the diagnosis that came out of it was that she now has something called scleroderma, which is a fatal diagnosis. And it's an autoimmune response that the body has because it can't figure out what's attacking it. And so occasionally it attacks anything and everything in the body and kills the person who has this diagnosis. And my wife periodically has these horrible outbreaks of a very nasty rash that bleeds and it drips, and we just try to deal with it.
Wow, man, that's this is not easy to listen to, people, but it is important that we do. It is because people are dealing with this around the world, and this is what we do right here at Third Phase Moon. Let's see if we can get into one more question from the public. Let's bring them in. If you've got a question, let's bring them in. Area code 661. You got a question for John Edmonds? Go ahead. Great. Well, 661's not happening. Let's try 832. Area code 832. You're live. Third Phase Moon. You got a question for John Edmonds? Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me? Oh, okay, great,
Yes,
great.
sir.
Excuse me? The only thing I have, I believe it all, and I understand it all, and I'm a firm believer in many species other than us. And the violent part is the only thing
go
I
ahead
have
with your question,
contradictory
sir.
with.
Okay, go ahead with the question. Yep.
You don't hear me? The
Yeah, I got
question
you.
is, why would they be violent and do things like that? Because they're so far advanced from us that they know war and violence, there's nothing that comes of it. And that's the only thing that intrigues me, is because I don't think that they would want to damage or hurt anybody because they're farther along down the genome than we are. They're so far
Who
advanced.
told you that?
Well, he said that he was
I can
having
give
violent.
you an answer to that. I
Excuse
can give you an answer to that. What we've discovered over time, and that is that the grays themselves, while they may be advanced, the grays that we're dealing with here, the small ones, are questionable as to even whether they're alive or not. They're more like sort of like a
Robot.
Yeah, robot or a vacuum or something like that. They're like automatons. They're not. They don't seem to have any kind of conscious mentality. They're working for or in coordination with some other being or some other race, or they are working with another part of the gray race. Now,
or they're protecting the portal.
F1, you're blocking out the sound. Just let John Edmonds speak. Thank you.
Or they're protecting a portal.
Well, there's more to it than that, and that is that over time, recently.
I can't hear you, John. You got to get closer, John. That's better.
I'm right on it. Can you hear me now?
You're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. What we discovered recently using the portal was somebody who is an expert channel, and that is that not just this property, but this entire area goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, and that there is a huge area of Arizona that at one point was under the influence of ancient Egypt and civilizations that were visiting here. And we believe that that's why they don't want this property to have any human contact or any humans on it, is because for some reason it is a sacred property.
Understood. Hey, John, do you think that, can I ask a question, Blake, real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, F1.
Hey, John, and maybe people can check into your site or to just check the stone that you've already had verified that by people that are experts in the business, that is, it looks like a bedrock stone, but as you and I have already talked about, it's cut out in what to me and you definitely verified looks like an active portal. Does that possibly the function of that stone? Is that possibly one of the items that would be put into the void of a Stargate to activate the portal and transfer of one dimension to another?
Well, that's kind of what we've been experimenting with. We had a gentleman who came out here who was just a visitor. You know, we accept visitors here, and, you know, we make appointments for people to come out to the ranch and check it out themselves in person. And this gentleman came out, and he had the stone in his hand, and he said, you know, it almost looks like you could shine something through it, like a laser or a strong light or something, and
right.
It would, you know, it would put an image on the wall. And so we happened to have a low watt laser, and he actually did that, and he shined it on the area in the living room that we believe to be a portal, and lo and behold, it started lighting up. And it's
kind of like a lens on a projector, huh, John?
Yes, exactly.
Now, that's incredible. That is incredible. And I got a feeling, like, wow, that hour just went by so fast right here at Third Phase Moon. And I got a feeling we've just hit the tip of the iceberg in regards to the John Edmonds continuing.
Let's have John back on Friday.
Well, let's.
I'd be happy to come.
Let's keep in touch. I want to get this one out there to the world right now. Let's gather things up, and then definitely we want John Edmonds back. I want to logistically maybe plan to come out there, but I also want to give John Edmonds a forum. We're going to give all his links, contacts, and everything in the description below. But if you've got a message right now, we got a couple minutes left. Well, you got an organization. What do you want to get out to the world? Go ahead. You got the platform, and then we'll bring you back definitely for more updates. This is incredible.
Thank you, Blake. Folks, I own and operate an equine charity for abandoned horses that are starving and abused and that have just been left in the desert to die and, be eaten by coyotes and die of thirst. It's called Hopeful, HOPEFUL, Hooves, HOOVES. You can go to hopefulhooves.org and see our organization there. And we ask folks, out of the goodness of their heart, if they'll make a donation. Any size is okay. The more the better, of course. All the money goes to feed horses. It goes to help with abandoned animals like dogs, cats, parrots, you name it. I mean, we've had everything from camels to you name it dropped off out here at one time or another. And, you know, all the money is, we're a 501c3 charity. We're legitimate. We're official. The money goes to the animals. It doesn't go into my pocket. I don't go out and party with it or anything else. And, you know, we buy hay for the horses, and we pay to have their feet trimmed, and we buy dog food and stuff with it. So we ask people to check. Yes.
Right on, John. That's you know, to anyone that's listening,
this is what Third Phase of the Moon is all about: getting the word out to the people. And John Edmonds, his story is quite incredible, and I got a feeling we'll be speaking with him very soon, and possibly, I hope, maybe visit the ranch, because we're going to go in there with equipment and we're going to shoot whatever we see. Thumbs up for that, people. Thumbs up for that. Stay tuned to Third Phase of the Moon. More updates. Thank you, F1, for the collaboration, for the hookup of that interview. This is insane. What an insane one. Everybody, we'll be back Friday night, same time, everybody. Keep your eyes on the skies. We're not alone.